At number 10, parkour gone wrong. I'm sure you've all seen an example of parkour before, but I would personally describe it as people launching themselves from one spot to the next, avoiding injury by the skin of their teeth. Often done outdoors, some of the maneuvers these people do are seemingly impossible. While it takes a lot of practice and coordination, this sport can also be super dangerous. Parkour daredevils like to take things quite literally to the next level, and as heights get higher and tricks get more technical, disaster's not far behind. Pavel Kashin was a Russian parkour artist who unfortunately learned his lesson the hard way. In 2013, he was performing a stunt on the rooftop of a 16-story building with a friend filming. They ended up capturing the final moments of Kashin's life. He was one of the well-known parkour artists or freerunners, being named one of the best in the world. He was known for his breakthrough stunts, which you can still find videos of today. On the day of his passing, Kashin was standing on a 3-foot wide ledge on the top of an apartment building. The daredevil decided to do a backflip on this very small ledge, with him completing the trick only to lose his footing on the landing and be sent over the edge. Kashin's fans and fellow members of the parkour community showed their support and sent respects to his family. His friends uploaded the final image of Pavel mid-flip with the permission of his parents to the web. Kashin's parents hoped that the image would deter others from doing the same as their son. Number 9. Wind turbine fire. If you've ever seen a wind turbine in real life before, you will know just how massive the energy converting monsters actually are. In October 2013, 2 workers were doing routine maintenance to a 67-meter high turbine in Unexplained, Netherlands. Don't come for me, I know I butchered that name, but while they were doing this maintenance, a fire broke out, quickly engulfing the only escape route, trapping the workers high above the ground. Due to the height of the fire, the firefighters had a hard time reaching the fire to put it out, so a specialized crew of firefighters were called in with a large crane. Unfortunately, this took hours, which the technicians did not have. In their last moments, a photo of the tragedy was snapped, and in it you can see the turbine in a blaze, but you can also see the 2 workers embracing in their final moments. The image just amplifies how big the turbine actually is and shows how hopeless a rescue mission would have been. The men were just 19 and 21 at the time. One tried one last effort to survive, with one man jumping from the wind turbine in the last effort to save himself, and the other tried to scale down the side only to be caught up in the blaze. The man who jumped was found in a field next to the turbine, and the other was found when firefighters were able to finally climb to the turbine. The cause of the fire is unknown, but believed to be a short circuit. While this freak accident ended up taking 2 lives, the tragedy led to a political inquiry into safety precautions for wind turbine maintenance crews. Their final photo together was sad, but it was nice that in their final moments they did have each other. Number 8. Racing to disaster. Gary Box was one of the many firefighters who was there on 9/11, risking it all in order to save lives. Unfortunately, he was also one of the many who never made it home after that day. Hours before heroically losing his life, Box was photographed racing towards the disaster. The image was taken in the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel by a pedestrian in their car. Their engine got stuck in the traffic of the tunnel, so in full gear, carrying as much as they could, Box and the rest of his crew started running on foot to ground zero. Gary was 35 at the time, and his remains were never recovered. All images taken that day I'm sure have something haunting about them, but knowing how little time he had left is another level. At number 7. Ronaldo Dagsa. He was a Filipino politician, a member of the Peacekeeping Action Team, and a corporal in the Philippine Army Reserve Command. Now, this photo is not of Dagsa before he passed, but due to how haunting it is, I still had to include it. His passing achieved notoriety due to the picture he snapped of his family on New Year's with unbelievable timing. The image Dagsa captured also inadvertently captured the man who was about to take the shot that would ultimately take his life. The photo was extremely helpful when it came to investigators identifying the shooter, because the image shows the gunman quite literally seconds before taking the fatal shot. The picture was taken outside the councilman's house in metropolitan Manila. The photo led to a quick arrest of the shooter as well as his accomplice. Apparently, the suspects were known car thieves out on bail, likely holding a grudge against Dagsa, who had the men arrested a year earlier. It is extremely sad that Dagsa unknowingly captured his own final moments, especially with his family being right there, but at least they were able to use it to catch the gunman. Number 6. Discount flight. Keith Sapsard was from Randwick, New South Wales. whales. He passed away just 14 years old with his final moments caught on camera. On February 22, 1970, the teen snuck onto the tarmac at Sydney Airport in Australia with the idea to hide inside a Tokyo-bound plane in order to run away. Unfortunately, Sapsford would never make it to Tokyo. His father described Keith as a curious kid who always had an urge to keep on the move. Due to his restlessness, his parents decided to send him to Boys Town, a Roman Catholic institution specializing in troubled children, for some discipline and structure. Instead, Sapsford escaped from the facility after a couple weeks and headed to the airport. Thanks to the far more relaxed regulations and security of the 70s, Sapsford was able to sneak onto the tarmac with ease. It's unknown if Keith knew where the plane was headed, but he saw a plane preparing for boarding and climbed into its wheel well. It took a few hours for the plane to take off, but eventually it made its way to the sky. What Keith didn't know was that the plane was going to reopen the wheel compartments to retract the wheels. When this happened, Sapsford fell out of the plane, falling 200 feet. One of the craziest things about this tragic event was by pure coincidence. Photographer John Gilpin was simply taking pictures at the airport when he unknowingly snapped a pic at the exact same time Sapsford was falling from the plane. I bet when he developed that roll of film, he was totally surprised. His father later said, "All my son wanted to do was see the world. He had itchy feet and his determination to see how the rest of the world lives cost him his life." Obviously, what happened to Keith was a tragedy, but the photo captured by Gilpin is remarkable as well as haunting. At number 5, Fatal Friend. Brittany Gargle and Cheyenne Antoine were the best of friends until they weren't. Apparently, Brittany was extremely hardworking. At 16, she was juggling school and 2 jobs. Antoine had a rough upbringing with her parents falling into substance use. Cheyenne grew up in foster care. At 15, Antoine's mother passed away, and to cope with the news, she got involved with some dangerous company, also falling into substance use. That's when the two girls met, and Brittany helped Cheyenne manage her feelings, and the two became close. On March 25, 2015, Brittany posted a picture of her and Cheyenne on social media. The two planned to go out for drinks and have fun, but as the night went on, things got out of hand and the details became fuzzy. The girls traveled to a pub, then to a house party, and then one more pub. Cheyenne claimed that around 4 a.m. Brittany asked a man for a lighter and invited him for drinks, but she didn't know what happened later. Cheyenne heard nothing from Brittany the next day, and later the police received a 911 call of a woman lying on her back, cold to the touch. The woman was identified as Brittany. Cheyenne was questioned and her story checked out, but the police thought she was hiding something. As the police dug further, more details came out. In the end, Brittany's passing was ruled a strangling, and this led them to a crucial lead. It was the picture Cheyenne had posted on social media the night of the events. In it, Cheyenne was wearing a stylish black belt, the same belt that had been found at the crime scene. In 2017, after all the evidence collected, Cheyenne was arrested for taking Brittany's life, with Cheyenne claiming not to remember anything due to the substances. In the end, Cheyenne was sentenced to 7 years in prison, with her release in 2024. At number 4, The Final Dive. Nicholas Mavoli was an American freediver who passed doing what he loved, but not before taking a picture that will give you the chills. Mavoli began freediving competitively in 2012, winning titles twice at the Deja Blue competition and finishing 3rd at the Caribbean Cup in Honduras. With much success in his newfound passion, Mavoli only wanted to take things even further. On November 15, 2013, he prepared to dive into Dean's Blue Hole, hoping to reach 72 meters on a single inhalation with no fins or supplemental oxygen. Surrounded by 15 other athletes and observers, as well as 5 safety divers, he submerged face first, looking like a human arrow diving into the darkness that would ultimately end up being his last dive. Mike Board, freediving record holder, said diving into a depth with no fins, that's a hard physical dive. I was thinking, okay, he's going to have a hard time getting up. Yet, after a dive of 3 minutes and 38 seconds, Mavoli shot back up to the surface. Unfortunately, instead of celebrating the dive, things quickly turned into a nightmare. Mavoli ripped off his goggles, flashed the OK sign, and attempted to complete surface protocol that would make the attempt official by saying, "I am okay," but he wasn't. His words came out jumbled and his eyes were wide and blank. This moment was captured on camera, and the blank fear in the diver's eyes is frightening. He lost consciousness and never regained it after suffering a pulmonary edema. Number 3. Dyatlov Pass Mystery. The Dyatlov Pass incident was the event in which 9 Soviet trekkers passed away in the northern Ural Mountains between February 1st and 2nd, 1959 in uncertain circumstances. There are many theories as to what caused the tragedy, but ultimately it's a mystery. The experienced trekking group from the Eerie Polytechnic Institute was led by Igor Dyatlov. Overnight, something seemingly caused the group to cut their way out of their tent from inside and flee the campsite. While them cutting open their tent from the inside is confusing enough, the bodies found were improperly dressed for the heavy snowfall and the freezing temperatures. As the story goes on, things only get further from making sense. After the bodies were discovered, Soviet authorities determined that 6 had passed from hypothermia, while the other 3 suffered physical trauma. 1 had major skull damage, 2 severe chest trauma, and another had a small skull fracture. 4 of the bodies were found lying in a creek, and 3 of those bodies had soft tissue damage to the head and face. 2 bodies were missing eyes, 1 missing a tongue, and another had missing eyebrows. Now, if it had just been the hypothermia, this case would be totally different, but what the heck did all this physical damage in the middle of nowhere? While we aren't sure exactly what went down, there are lots of pictures of the group's final days as well as plenty of theories. There was a new investigation opened in 2019 calling it an avalanche, but I don't know still. Does an avalanche really remove your tongue and eyeballs? Number 2. Miracle of the Andes. On October 13, 1972, Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571, chartered by an amateur rugby team, crashed into the Andes Mountains. The wreckage of the crash was not located for more than 2 months. There were only 16 out of 45 who survived the whole thing, with the incident gaining international attention after it was revealed the survivors had resorted to cannibalism. Due to the bad weather, the pilot of the plane misjudged their location, and the plane ended up striking a mountain, losing both wings before crashing into a remote valley of Argentina, near the Chilean border. A search party was sent out, but due to the white plane on the white snow, it was unable to be spotted from above. After 8 days, the search was called off, thinking there were no survivors, though later rescue efforts were taken over by family. There were initially 33 survivors, but due to the elements, injuries, and an avalanche, the numbers were shrinking. Several survivors surveyed the area for an escape route. On December 12th, almost exactly 2 months since the crash, 3 men set out to go find help. Though one did return to the crash site after a difficult trek, the other 2 men finally came across some people. It was December 20th now, and the people they found alerted the authorities. On December 22nd, 6 survivors were flown to safety, but bad weather meant the remaining 8 waited until the 23rd. There are photos from both before the crash of the group on the plane and after of the group surrounding the fallen plane, as well as books and a movie about the incident. And at number 1, solo hike. In 2014, 2 women, Chris Kremers and Lisanne Froon, were visiting Panama from the Netherlands, and on April 1st they went on a walk through the scenic forest near the Baru volcano, only to never return. Alarm was raised the day after they didn't return from their hike, and a search party was sent out right away, only to find no sign of Kremers or Froon. A while later, a local woman found Froon's backpack. In the bag they found her camera, 2 pairs of sunglasses, some cash, her passport, a water bottle, 2 bras, and both the women's phones. Probably the most concerning they found were the final images taken on the camera. All of the photos from April 1st are just the 2 women exploring the jungle. Then there are no pictures until April 8th, when 90 unsettling pictures were taken with the flash in the middle of the jungle, timestamped between 1 and 4 a.m. Most of these images are of complete darkness and the jungle floor, but there are 2 very alarming pics. One shows some of the women's belongings on a rock, and the other looks like the back of Kremers' head with what appears to be bloodstain in her hair. Something else suspicious about the camera is that image 509 was missing, with 508 being the last of them looking okay, and image 510 being the first in the darkness days later. They found a pelvic bone and a foot still inside a boot. Froon's bones appeared to decompose naturally, but Kremers seemed to be stark white as if they'd been bleached, further leading to question if someone else was involved.
Starting off this countdown, we have Paul Walker. On November 30th, 2013, Paul Walker attended a charity event for Reach Out Worldwide. He was last captured driving off in a red Porsche Carrera GT. Little did he know that later that day, the car would crash into a concrete lamppost and 2 trees before bursting into flames, killing Walker and the driver instantly. It's so sad looking at this photo. Like, Paul seemed happy. He got into the car not knowing his fate. In fact, what makes this scarier is that he might have still been alive had it not been for one text. He woke up that morning completely forgetting about the charity event that he had to go to. That was until someone texted him to remind him. Had he not gone to the event and just stayed home, things would have been different.
Coming in at number 9, we have Robin Williams, one of the greatest actors and comedic minds that has ever passed through Hollywood. There was movie after movie that this guy made that influenced people from my generation and so many generations after. And right before we get further into this point, guys, remember that you can like, comment, subscribe, and hit the little notification bell, and stick around to the end of the list because we're going to be answering some comments from our previous video, Top 10 Disney Mysteries. I mean, we can go down the list. This guy was in Aladdin, Jumanji, Mrs. Doubtfire. All of those movies were certified bangers, and this was the last picture of him before he passed. He looks so happy. He's chilling out with his monkey Crystal, and the two of them are just being the best of friends, but even having one of the coolest pets of all time wasn't enough to keep him happy. Unfortunately, shortly after this picture was taken, Robin Williams would visit the doctor and get a very sad diagnosis. It would seem that he had Parkinson's. It was devastating news that would lead to him taking his own life. Apparently, he was misdiagnosed and he actually had a specific type of dementia, which leads to paranoia.
In our 8th spot, we have Amelia Earhart. The fate of Amelia Earhart is still unknown. Did she die in a plane crash? Did she get stranded on a deserted island? We honestly don't know. In 1937, Amelia set out with her navigator Fred Noonan to fly around the world. One of the last photos of Amelia was her packing her suitcase for travels, in which she would never return from. Much like these other celebrities, she looked so happy, just excited to go on this adventure. But little did she know it would end in tragedy. Amelia and Fred were last heard from on July 2nd, 1937. The government spent 15 years looking for them. In fact, searching for Earhart was the largest and most expensive search in American history. Sadly, hardly anything came of this. They thought that maybe the plane crashed somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, but who really knows?
Coming in at number 7, we have Gene Wilder. It's impressive how Gene Wilder was able to be both hilarious and terrifying in many of his performances. Like throughout most of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, he's kind of scary, but then when you check out Blazing Saddles, he's one of the funniest dudes around. This was the last picture taken of him, or at least the last one that was shared to the public. He lived well into his 80s, and in this picture you can see him with his daughter walking in Los Angeles. It was in 2013 when one of the most famous actors in the world would learn that he was battling Alzheimer's. This is obviously a very strenuous disease, and it can slowly wither a person away. It's a tough battle, and because of this, Gene wanted to stay out of the public eye. So after he was told by doctors that he was fighting Alzheimer's, he decided that he would stay out of the peering eye of fans and become a homebody. And I mean, it sounds like a solid move. You had an amazing career, so in your last few years it would be nice to relax. He passed away in 2016.
Coming in at number 6, we have Chris McCandless. Chris was a 24-year-old American adventurer. In 1992, Chris set out on another adventure, this time into the Alaskan wilderness. However, he never made it out alive. His death has been debated for years. Some say he died of starvation, others believe that he died of poisoning after eating toxic berries. The last photo ever captured of Chris was a picture he took of himself smiling and waving to the camera, holding a note. The note is believed to have said, "I have had a happy life and thank the Lord. Goodbye and may God bless all." Later, he was found dead by a group of hunters. The hunters were looking for a shelter for the night when they came across the bus where Chris was staying in. But when they entered, they discovered Chris laying in his sleeping bag at the back of the bus. His manes were already decomposing. Now, the last thing Chris ever wrote read, "Day 107. Beautiful blueberries." Then days 108 through 112 contained no words, they just had slashes. And on day 113, there was no entry at all. So maybe it was some toxic berry that killed him. But still, this photo is super eerie, especially because of the sign he was holding. It's like he knew he wasn't going to make it.
Coming in at number 5, we have Nikola Tesla, one of the greatest minds to ever grace the earth. This dude was straight up one of the smartest people who has ever lived. If it wasn't for this guy, we wouldn't have the radio, we wouldn't have access to electricity the way that we do today. And even though he has nothing to do with the company Tesla that makes electric cars, there would be a solid chance that those electric cars wouldn't be running right now if it wasn't for the inventions that this man made. This was the last known picture of the inventor. He looks like he was ill, but he was actually mostly thin because he had changed his diet to eating very light. He wouldn't eat meat and he mostly lived off bread, honey, and vegetable juices. Probably the saddest part about the end of Tesla's life is that he basically had no money, although he did find pleasure in pigeons. For some reason, the inventor had an obsession with pigeons. He would go to the park and feed them, and even said that they gave him some of the ideas for his inventions. That's the secret. We've got to start hanging out with more pigeons.
In our fourth spot, we have James Dean. On September 30th, 1955, James Dean died in a car accident at only 24 years old. It's said that he was driving fast and suddenly had to swerve out of the way to avoid an oncoming car, but ended up hitting it almost head on. It's said that Dean died instantly, but his passenger survived with injuries. That day, Dean was photographed posing with the very car he later died in. In fact, that car is said to be cursed. He only owned it for 9 days before his death. Later, after he died, the car rolled off the back of a truck and crushed the legs of a mechanic. Then the car's parts were disassembled and installed into other cars around the world. All those car owners also got into deadly crashes. So Dean's last picture was literally with a cursed car that killed him.
Coming in at number 3, we have Aaliyah. Aaliyah was a rising star in the R&B community, and it seemed that she was going to be the next star in the music industry. Literally everyone who was into music was talking about her. Before she was 22 years old, she had already won 14 awards and been nominated for 73 awards through different music organizations. There's a good portion of us who don't even have our driver's license at 22, but her death would shock the world. Either one of those two pictures is thought to be the last of Aaliyah. They didn't have timestamps on every last picture back then, so we don't know exactly which one it is. But Aaliyah would board a plane that was headed to the Bahamas. It should have been a nice short trip, but the plane crashed. Out of nowhere, the next big thing in music was gone.
In our second spot, we have John Lennon. On December 8th, 1980, John Lennon was assassinated outside of his Manhattan apartment. Earlier that day, Lennon was photographed signing autographs for fans. The last photo of him was him signing an autograph for the man who would later murder him. It's so eerie. The photo literally foreshadows his fate. He was literally pictured with his killer. Later that night, the man in the photo, David Chapman, returned to Lennon's apartment and waited outside for him. When he came down, Chapman shot him 4 times in the back. That's just way too freaky for me.
And coming in at the number 1 spot, we have Marilyn Monroe. I mean, what didn't Marilyn Monroe do? It's thought that she changed how women could represent themselves in the public eye. She was one of the biggest beauty icons of all time. It's thought that she had an affair with the President of the United States. She was a bona fide legend, and she may never be forgotten. This was the last known picture taken of the superstar. She was hanging out with one of her buddies, Buddy Greco, who was a famous jazz musician of the time. Man, jazz has changed a lot. It used to be the coolest thing in town. There's no way you could be playing jazz now and it would get you into the arms of Scarlett Johansson. On the record, her death was deemed a suicide, but off the record, it seemed that the CIA might have taken her out. She knew too many secrets from being close to the president. They couldn't let those secrets leak out.
In our number 10 spot, we have the Queen's last photos. Look, these last photos of the Queen are not dark at all. Yes, I know the title of this video says dark, but I can't do it. I can't say that it is. The Queen literally looks so sweet in this photo, and there's nothing but light surrounding her. She reminds me so much of my granny. I hope they're having tea together in heaven. The Queen almost looks like an angel already here in these photos. In almost every one of these last shots shared, the Queen is smiling so big, as if she's just happy and not suffering or anything. Of course, the public doesn't know the details of her final days and what she might have gone through, but these photos would suggest that she was content in her favorite place, Balmoral, and just living up her final days on the planet. You could spin it and say that anyone's final days are dark, but nah, these are just bright and beautiful, and I refuse to associate them with the characterization of dark. In our number 9 spot, we have Princess Diana's last shots. Here we have a bunch of shots of Princess Diana in her final hours, getting into her car with her bodyguard and the man that she was seeing, Dodi Fayed. She was in Paris at the time when her car crashed, killing all of the passengers in the car. There is one final shot of Princess Diana with Dodi in an elevator, and Diana is looking directly at the elevator camera and smiling. The shot is quite eerie as you look at her beautiful smile and spirit having fun until the end. What makes them even more eerie is if there's a slight part of you that buys into the theory that the crash was an insider job. That always
just makes me so uncomfortable to think about, and it quite possibly makes looking at these images more chilling. In our number 8 spot, we have the Queen and Prince Philip. This is one of the last photos taken of Prince Philip at age 99 with Queen Elizabeth II. It's actually so sweet and sad at the same time as they look at a homemade wedding anniversary card from their grandchildren. The picture was taken to mark their 73rd wedding anniversary right before the prince passed away. Did y'all know that Prince Philip was already a prince of Greece before he was married to Queen Elizabeth II and became Prince Consort and Duke of Edinburgh? Because I didn't. But honestly, I should have guessed. I feel like the royal family previously used to keep the bloodlines quite close and within the realm of the blue bloods, you know? Ever heard of the blue bloods theory, anyone? People believe that you're either programmed in your blood to be wealthy or poor. It's a really interesting thought and rabbit hole to go down, that's for sure. In our number 7 spot, we have the Queen and her grandson. One of the last photos of Queen Elizabeth II with Prince Louis, her grandson, is such a treat to look at. This photo was taken at the Queen's Platinum Jubilee in June 2022, and honestly, earlier that day you do see the Queen looking possibly a little distressed. She's frowning a lot and truly just looking a little uncomfortable, but in this moment captured of the Queen and Prince Louis, she literally looks particularly blissful. Prince Louis is holding his ears in the most comical way, appearing a little distressed from the noise, I'm sure, of, you know, thousands of Brits below him that had come to honor the Queen in her celebrations. We have seen some other smaller royals do something similar when on the balcony in the past, but no one can deny that Prince Louis certainly is full of life and personality, and so it's really just a funny shot to see. Albeit sad though that perhaps the prince's last photo wasn't a smiling one, but I bet his adult self will appreciate the lightness of it. In our number 6 spot, we have the Jubilee family photo. The last photo of the family together on the balcony without Harry and Meghan was during the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebration on the final day of June the 5th, 2022. Queen Elizabeth II can be seen with now King Charles III, now Queen Consort Camilla, Prince William, Duchess Kate, and their 3 kids, Prince Louis, Prince George, and Princess Charlotte. The royal family looks very happy to be celebrating the Queen's long reign. The Queen herself looks amazing in her vibrant green suit. However, in video footage from the time the family was on the balcony, the Queen does seemingly have moments of looking a little sad, and gosh, I wonder what's going through her mind. It's also really sad that this celebratory day is one of their last big celebrations and moments photographed together. In our number 5 spot, we have Prince Harry at the Queen's funeral. These are a few of the last photos taken of Prince Harry at the Queen's funeral. Of course, these photos are terribly sad to see and dark, as he is not only attending the Queen's funeral, but his grandmother's funeral. In some of the photos, you see the prince crying and hiding his face, and then you also see him walking during the service holding his wife Meghan Markle's hand. The prince stepped down from the royal family and gave up his name, and so during the funeral, we saw him be quite separated from his royal family. It was rumored that the prince and Meghan were snubbed for the funeral procession as they were seated in the second row behind the royal family, but whether that is protocol or snubbery, that has not been confirmed. Assuming it was protocol, that must have been so hard on him to not be able to fully be present with his family during this time, but hopefully he was included in ways we did not see. After Meghan Markle's expose with Oprah and the interviews that Harry has also done commenting on his family, I'm not so sure of that, but hopefully the death of the Queen will bring the family closer together again. In our number 4 spot, we have Prince William and Prince Harry together. One of the few photos captured at the funeral for Queen Elizabeth II is of Prince William and Prince Harry together, and these photos have had the world going crazy as to whether they are friendly or not. Some say that the two princes are not on good terms, while others say that they have made amends due to the passing of the Queen. What we are certain of is that they didn't seem to converse much during the service, and they definitely felt a tad frosty to each other. Although it was obviously a sad day, and perhaps the coldness of the photos photos really had more to do with their sadness for their grandmother and them both retreating within themselves mentally, as people often do at funerals, rather than them just being in a massive fight that has forever split them apart. The brothers were seemingly so close growing up, and so I think I speak for everyone when I say that I hope whatever is going on with them gets mended, because life is too short. In our number 3 spot we have Peter Phillips. Okay, I know what you might be thinking. Who? Peter Phillips is not a part of the immediate royal family, but he is the son of Princess Anne, the Queen's daughter, and so he is another one of her grandsons. And while a rather dark photo was captured of him at the Queen's funeral that I just have to share with you all, he was caught possibly exposing his own thoughts in a photo from September 19th, the Queen's funeral, as he's walking behind Prince Harry and, yes, Meghan Markle. In the photo, he is glaring at Meghan Markle. Was he captured in a moment of internal judgment? Whatever is going on, it is clear that he feels some kind of negative feelings toward Meghan, and I mean, most of the royal family seemingly does, as Meghan has been exposing the behind-the-scenes goings-on within the royal family. They have always been quite private, and the world saw them as a mystery, besides, well, some of the scandals that have happened over the years, but for the most part, they have remained quite private, so perhaps Peter feels uncomfortable with Meghan around, but in any case, this was a dark moment captured from that day. In our number 2 spot we have Queen Elizabeth II waving to her father. Okay, I went back in the archives for this one. This photo honestly is super sad to see and quite dark, so I needed to add it to the list. In 1952, the Queen left for a trip to Kenya, and it was on this trip that she became Queen and learned of the death of her father, King George VI. In this photo we see right here the Queen is looking at her father and waving to him for the last time. Whoa. Can you imagine if the last moment you had with your father was caught on camera? I'm sure this has been the case for a lot of people, but man, would that crumble me inside if that were to happen. It would be so sad, but also a gift as well. And when you think about it, the Queen looks quite happy in this photo, and so it's kinda a nice thought to think that perhaps one of the last moments that the King had with his daughter, she was smiling. Dark, but beautiful at the same time. Finally, in our number 1 spot, we have Prince Andrew at the funeral. Arguably one of the darkest last photos of one of the darkest royal family members, Prince Andrew is seen walking with his siblings and the new king from Westminster Hall to Westminster Abbey. He looks as one would expect one to look when their parent passes away, but it's hard to not look at him and see an aura of possibly someone who was involved with the horrendous crimes that were led by Jeffrey Epstein. After the public found out about Prince Andrew's relationship with Jeffrey and a lot of the suspicious activity that didn't get cleared up after Prince Andrew did an interview on the accusations, the prince resigned from his public roles, and the Queen herself removed his honorary military affiliations and royal charitable patronages in January 2022. Prince Andrew lobbied very hard to stop Charles from becoming king. Apparently Prince Andrew doesn't get on with King Charles III very well, so that's very interesting. Anyways, it's hard not to see a picture of him and immediately think dark.
Starting off this countdown, we have Prabhu Batara. Prabhu Batara was a taxi driver in India that got mauled to death by a bear after trying to take a selfie with it. He was driving some passengers home from a wedding when he spotted a bear by the side of the road. He got out, leaving the passengers in the car, promising he would only be a few minutes. The bear was injured and trying to drink water from a pond. When he got too close to it, the bear attacked. He got pulled to the ground and clawed at. The photos you see here are photos people took of the incident as it happened. Now, people did go to his rescue, but were afraid for their own life. So they tried to scare off the bear by throwing rocks and sticks at it. But in the end, this enraged the bear even more. He passed away minutes after these photos were taken. Moving on at number 9, we have David Johnston. David Johnston was a 31-year-old volcanologist that fell victim to a volcano explosion on May 18, 1980. 13 hours before his death, this photo was taken of him. That was the very spot that he was killed. So on that day, it was Johnston's shift to keep an eye on Mount St. Helen, the mountain where the explosion occurred. He was 6 miles away from the volcano. That morning, the eruption came fast and without warning. As it was erupting, he signaled to the base saying, "Vancouver, Vancouver, this is it." Shortly after he radioed that, he was killed by a lateral blast from the volcano. Sadly, his body was never found. All that was left were remnants of his trailer. Now, it breaks my heart seeing that photo. Just look how happy he looks. Little did he know that 13 hours later, that would be it. And at number 8, we have the dangerous selfie. Taking selfies any and everywhere is kind of the new norm, but you would never think that a selfie would be deadly. Sadly, you'd be mistaken. Back in March of 2017, best friends Nitzia Mendoza Corral and Clarissa Morquicho Miranda were taking selfies on an airstrip when they were hit and killed by an oncoming plane. The two were standing in the back of a van when this happened, but they were warned not to do so. They took this photo, and moments later, they were hit by a wing of a plane that they didn't see coming. They passed away instantly. Now, when you look at this photo, it just feels so dark, knowing seconds later the girls lost their lives. Coming in at number 7, we have the extreme selfie. 26-year-old Wu Yongning was known for his extreme selfies. He was considered a rooftopper, which means he would stand on high buildings or structures or other precarious places and take photos and videos doing so. He made a living doing this, and he would do so with no harness, net, or safety equipment. This photo was one of the last photos he ever took. That was before November of 2017 when he died after falling off of a 62-story building. He was doing this as part of a contest to win 100,000 yuans, but this would be the last of his dangerous stunts. He climbed up to the top of that building that day with the hopes of winning that prize. He never thought it would end the way that it did. Coming in at number 6, we have Gary Slock. This selfie is of Gary Slock and his mother aboard their flight. Little did they know the horrors that would soon await. They were both excited for their vacation to Malaysia. The trip was designed for single parents and their children. Sadly, 3 hours after that photo was taken, a missile shot down the plane as it flew over eastern Ukraine. There were no survivors. The two were so excited for their trip, they referred to it as their dream holiday. Again, just look how happy the two were. This breaks my heart. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the deadly Tinder date. A lot of people use the dating app Tinder, but there have been a number of Tinder horror stories of dates going terribly wrong, including this one. This is Cindy Loof. This is also the last photo of Cindy. Cindy was very excited to meet up with her Tinder date, Audrey, but Audrey wasn't who she said she was. She was actually a girl named Bailey Boswell. The two had already gone out the night before on November 14th, 2017. On that day, she sent a message to Bailey asking if it was only going to be the two of them. Previously, she had gone on dates with other women who would try to bring a male along for some extra fun. But Bailey reassured her it was only going to be them. On November 15th, on their second date, Bailey brought her boyfriend along. Bailey then convinced Sydney to participate in some acts with the two. This led to them playing a game in which Sydney was choked to death. So the last photo of Sydney was her all excited for her date, which would later take her life. In our 4th spot, we have Anne Faber. On the evening of September 29th, 2017, Anne Faber went out for a bike ride by herself. By 6:50 p.m., she got caught in the rain and sent this selfie to her boyfriend. An hour later, her boyfriend reached out to her, but by then it was too late. Anne had already been kidnapped. Her body was found 2 weeks later in the woods. That was the last photo Anne ever took, and also the last photo of her. Moving on, number 3, we have the stowaway. At 14 years of age, Keith Sapsford was sent to a Catholic residential school. He hated it so much that he fled, heading to the Sydney airport with hopes of stowing away on an airplane headed to Japan. But his plan took a deadly turn. On February 22nd of 1970, he snuck into the airport and climbed into the airplane's wheel compartment. He waited there safely for the plane to take off. Sadly, when the plane was 200 feet in the air, the plane wheels retracted and he fell 200 feet to his death. At this time, a photographer named John Gilpin was taking pictures at the airport when he saw the boy falling from the sky. He managed to capture this photo. That was the last photo ever taken of Keith. Literally, you see him falling from the sky. It's creepy. In our second spot, we have Japan Airlines Flight 123. This photo was recovered from Japan Airlines Flight 123, the flight that ended up in disaster with the plane crashing and 520 people dying. This incident is said to be one of the deadliest single plane crashes in the history. Only 4 passengers survived. On August 12, 1985, the plane took off at 6:12 p.m. and was scheduled to arrive at Osaka 1 hour later. But during the flight, the pilot had trouble controlling the plane, and they began to lose altitude quickly. This photo was taken as that was happening. You can see the oxygen masks drop down as a result. After failing to gain control of the plane, it crashed into Mount Takamagahara. This is the last photo of almost everyone on board. And in our number 1 spot, we have Regina K. Walters. Back in 1991, Regina K. Walters and her boyfriend ran off together. Later, they were picked up by a man named Robert Ben Rhodes. He was known as the truck stop killer. He was a serial killer that murdered over 50 women. Regina K. Walters was his last victim. This photo is of Regina after being abducted by Robert. He forced her to cut her hair and made her wear that dress and the heels you see in the photo. He then proceeded to take a number of photos of her, including this one in which she looks terrified for her own life. These photos were taken in an abandoned farmhouse where her body was later found. So the last photos of Regina were taken by her killer in the place she died. What gets me the most is the look in her eyes. She looks terrified, as anyone would be in her situation. Starting off this countdown, we have the helicopter crash. In 2019, 32-year-old Benno Anthony Penna and his wife, Megan Michelle Hawk Penna, went out for a helicopter ride in Utah. Their plan was to fly to South Valley Region Airport in West Jordan. Their ETA was 2 p.m. When the pair failed to arrive, helicopters were sent out looking for them. Shortly before 6:30 p.m. that day, their helicopter was found. Sadly, they had crashed. This photo was posted just a few minutes before the deadly crash. Look how happy the pair look. Little did they know what was soon to happen. Now, authorities don't know for sure what happened, but it was reported that there was some heavy weather in the area that day. So maybe that's what played a role in the crash. It's a very tragic story. In our 9th spot, we have the drowning. On November 11, 2017, fans of the Filipino TV star and dancer Franco Hernandez were heartbroken when they heard the news of his passing. On that day, he was out with his girlfriend and some friends on a small boat. This photo was taken that day just before a wave hit their boat, knocking everyone overboard into the water. Sadly, Franco drowned. The people operating the boat did manage to pull him and his girlfriend back onto the boat, but by that time he was already unconscious. He was immediately brought to a clinic but was declared dead on arrival. This is so sad because everyone was out enjoying their day, having fun. Little did they know what was going to happen. Moving on to number 8, we have the day the music died. February 3rd, 1959 is also referred to as the day the music died, because on that day, Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and J.P. Richardson died in a plane crash. The three had been on tour together. That day, they boarded the plane and were headed out to the next stop on their tour, but the three men and their pilot never made it. Now the thing is, the trio had been taking a tour bus for the first half of the tour, but they said it was unreliable and freezing cold, so being fed up, they decided to take a charter plane. Had they continued on with the tour bus, they would have made it there alive. This photo was taken of the three artists right before they hopped on the plane. It's the last photo of them. Apparently, the pilot was unaware of a weather advisory that had been issued before takeoff. A short while after liftoff, the plane ran into troubles and crashed. Apparently, the scene of the crash was very gruesome. The three artists had been thrown from the plane in the crash. The pilot was trapped inside of the cockpit. Coming in at number 7, we have the cliff jumping. Several years ago, Naval Air crewman Shannon Nunez decided to take a celebratory jump at a popular cliff jumping spot in Hawaii. She was celebrating her recent qualifications as a Naval Air crewman. Jumping off this cliff was quite common in the area, but it's also very dangerous. The cliff is roughly 80 feet high. She took this photo before her jump. Little did she know what was going to happen. When she jumped, she ended up landing sideways. She then started to panic and drowned. Her two friends that were with her tried to save her, but it was far too late. She was so excited for this jump. She was so proud of herself and her accomplishments. It's just sad that it had to end this way for her. Coming in at number 6, we have the falling rock. This photo features a group of individuals who went out hiking. Little did they know what was going to happen a few moments later. Literally minutes after this photo was taken, a rock above fell and hit the man on the far right in the red shirt. It crushed him completely. He was dead upon impact. All his friends witnessed this happen to him, and that must have been traumatizing. Like, it was such a freak accident. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Burning Man Festival. The Burning Man Arts and Music Festival is an annual festival that takes place in the Black Rock Desert of Nevada. Tens of thousands of people gather from all over the world for it. Its main attraction is this big effigy that is then lit on fire. Well, during the festival in 2017, a man named Aaron Joel Mitchell ran right into the burning structure. He was burnt alive. To this day, his family does not know why he did this. He was not depressed, nor was he having thoughts of taking his own life. On top of that, a toxicology report showed that he did not have any alcohol or drugs in his system. But Aaron decided to dodge security and then run straight into the flames. Firefighters tried to stop him, but they were unsuccessful. When they did retrieve his body, it was far too late. This is the last photo ever taken of him. It's the moment he took his own life by running straight into the flames. In our 4th spot today, we have the birthday murder. On December 17th, 2017, 21-year-old Ismael Gutierrez and his friends went out for dinner to celebrate his 21st birthday. This photo was taken at his birthday celebration. Gutierrez is the young man holding the bottle. Later that night at around 3 a.m. he had been shot along with a random female. The group had been at the wrong place at the wrong time. Gutierrez and the woman were both taken to the hospital, but sadly he did not make it. And the fact that this happened on his birthday when he just wanted to have a good time makes it 10 times sadder. In our 3rd spot, we have the cabin fire. A couple of years ago, Bethany and her friends decided to go to a cottage. They spent the day out on the lake and then had a nice barbecue dinner. This photo was taken of Bethany out enjoying her time at the cabin. Sadly, 6 hours after this photo was taken, Bethany lost her life. An ember from the grill sparked a fire on the cabin deck. Soon, the whole cabin went up in flames. All the friends were able to escape except for Bethany and a dog. This is why you hug your friends and family extra tight. It's sad, but you never know when their last day will be. In our 2nd spot, we have Cameron Boyce. On July 6, 2019, Disney fans were shocked when they heard that the talented child actor Cameron Boyce had passed away in his sleep. He was taken from us way too soon. He was only 20 when he passed, and he had a bright future ahead of him. Now, Cameron passed away in his sleep due to a seizure which was brought on from an ongoing medical condition for which he was being treated for. Still, no one saw this coming. This photo was one of the last photos ever taken of Cameron. A beautiful photo of a beautiful soul. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the armed robbery. On September 21st, 2009, Angela Escobar and Alex Santiago were sleeping peacefully when an armed robber entered their home and shot them both dead. The robber proceeded to grab some personal belongings before fleeing the scene of the crime. This is the last photo of Angelina. What a beautiful and innocent soul, taken far too soon. Eventually though, the killer was caught. His name is Christopher Doring. He was caught after taking a phone call in jail. On the recorded call, he admitted to shooting both Angelina and Alex, and then said, and I quote, "I have no sympathy at all, I can do that again. That don't bother me. That just makes me sick to my stomach." Rest in peace, Angelina and Alex. Starting off this countdown, we have the plot to kill. This photo was taken of Thomas Bart Whittaker on the left and his younger brother Kevin on the right, just hours before Thomas planned to have his family killed. So apparently the two brothers were just goofing off and their mother wanted to take a photo of them. Then later they went out for dinner as like a little celebration for Thomas completing his exams, which was a lie. Anyways, while they were at the restaurant, Thomas had his friend enter his home and retrieve a gun and stage a burglary. He then waited at the front door for Thomas's family to return home. Once they did, he shot Thomas's mom and brother. His dad managed to survive. The photo shows Thomas's happy younger brother, but little did he know that his older brother literally had a plot to kill him. It's so disturbing. In our 9th spot, we have Victor Barrio. But before we go any further, if you guys are liking this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up and of course, subscribe to our channel. Come on guys, it really helps us out, so hit that button, subscribe, ring that little bell. Victor Barrio was a 29-year-old Spanish bullfighter. Sadly, on July 9th, 2016, his bullfighting days came to an end when a 529-kilogram bull's horn pierced through his chest. This moment was captured in front of a live live audience and also was broadcasted on live TV. Some people managed to get photos as this happened, and it's horrifying. You can see the look of pain on his face as the bull's horn just plunges through him. Like, I feel so bad for him and for all the people that had to witness it. It's so scary. In our 8th spot, we have the Panama hikers. Chris Kremers and Lizanne Froon were two young Dutch females that saved up to take a trip to Panama. Except while on a hike in the Panamanian jungle, the two disappeared. It wasn't until months later that their bodies were found, but it's still unclear how the two died. The last photos taken of them were in April of 2014, the day that they went on the hike. They are selfies of the girls looking very excited to be on the trip. These photos were found on their camera, which was found in a backpack along the banks of a river. The camera also contained other pictures, like of the jungle in the dead of night. Maybe they were using the camera's flash as a source of light. Another photo showed the back of Chris's head and it was bleeding. Again, it's so scary looking at these photos. Like, these poor young girls had no clue what was about to happen to them, and they were so excited for their trip. Coming in at number 7, we have the drowning. On October 22nd, 2003, Tina Watson and her husband, David Gabriel, went out scuba diving on their honeymoon. They just got married 11 days earlier, and scuba diving was part of their honeymoon itinerary. Now, in this photo, if you look right at the back, you can see a diver laying on the seafloor. That's Tina Watson. A few minutes before this photo was taken, it's believed that her husband turned off her air supply and held her underwater until she drowned. Then he swam up to the surface to alert other divers that she was in trouble. The photo was captured accidentally, and you can see the divers going to help Tina. Some say he held her underwater until she drowned. Others say he saw her struggling as a new scuba diver and just kind of left her there to die on her own. Either way, he pleaded guilty to manslaughter, and that was the last photo ever taken of her. In our 6th spot, we have the Dyatlov Pass incident. In February of 1959, a group of 9 experienced hikers set out to traverse the snowy mountains of Siberia. However, they all ended up mysteriously dying one by one. This photo was one of the last photos taken of them. Now, this case has been debated about for years, and there's tons of theories as to what happened to them. Some say they were hit by an avalanche at night and died from exposure. Others say a Yeti got them. In fact, there was a picture of a creature that looks like a Yeti found on one of the explorers' cameras. But it's a very odd case. Like, their tent was found ripped open from the inside, 2 bodies were found and they were only wearing underwear in the freezing cold. Another explorer's body was missing her tongue, eyes, and lips, and 2 of the other bodies had major chest fractures. To cause someone that much damage, it would be like equivalent to a car crash. And another hiker had a really high level of radiation on their clothes. It's just crazy, and to this day we don't know what truly happened. We all have these theories, but the only ones that really know are the hikers in the photo. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the submarine murder. Back in August of 2013, freelance journalist Kim Wall got an interview with Danish inventor Peter Madsen. As part of the interview, Kim was set to take a trip on his homemade submarine. This photo shows Kim aboard the submarine just before her trip. Sadly, once inside, Peter killed her and dismembered her body. Why did he do this? Well, some say he became fascinated with murder and torture. Evidence showed that he had been watching videos of women being killed on his computer, and shortly before he beheaded Kim, he watched a video on it. So it was clear that he had a fascination with it. It's sad that Kim had to be his victim. In our 4th spot, we have the Facebook murder. A couple of hours after this picture was taken, Cheyenne Anton left, used the black belt she is seen wearing in that photo to strangle Brittany Gargle. The two were best friends, but apparently got into a heated argument, and Cheyenne hit and strangled Brittany. Imagine taking a selfie with someone you thought you could trust just for them to go and kill you a couple hours later. It is so sick. Now, Cheyenne actually got away with this murder for 2 years until police finally found this photo on her Facebook and noticed that the belt that she was wearing was the same one found at the crime scene. She then pleaded guilty to manslaughter and was sentenced to 7 years in prison. Moving on to number 3, we have parkour gone wrong. Pavel Kashin was known for his dangerous stunts and abilities. In 2013, he challenged himself to do a backflip on the edge of a 16-floor building. He successfully completed the backflip, but as he landed, he lost his footing and fell over the edge. He died instantly. This photo was captured by his friend while he was performing the stunt. You can see he's in midair doing his trick. Sadly, that was the last stunt he ever performed. And at number 2, we have the stalker. On February of 2017, best friends Abby Williams and Libby German headed out for a hike in Indiana. This photo is of Abby Williams, taken right before they were both murdered. What's very disturbing is that in the background of these photos, you can literally see their killer lurking there. Apparently the man was stalking them for quite some time, and in the girls' photo roll, they actually got some pictures of him, probably because they felt like he was following them. So in the last photo ever taken of Abby, you can literally see her killer behind her. It makes me so sick. Worst of all, he's never been caught. There's currently a reward for anyone that can identify the man though, so hopefully they can get some justice soon. And in our number 1 spot, we have the gruesome scene. This photo is going to send shivers down your spine. But before I show you, let me give you a quick backstory. So this photo was taken of Travis Alexander while he was taking a shower. It was taken by his girlfriend and murderer Jody shortly before she stabbed him 27 to 29 times. She also slit his throat nearly ear to ear and shot him in the head. It was a very gruesome and sinister murder. In this photo, you can see how uncomfortable Travis looks. It's almost as if he knew she was up to something. He looks absolutely terrified. Now, the camera that captured this photo was actually tossed into his washing machine as an attempt to destroy it, but it didn't work, and some of the photos were still salvageable, like this one and one that she took of Travis's dead, bloody body. I saw it. You don't want to see it.